Fine. So, yes, great. So, yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to yet another edition of Business for Startups, organized by Kerala Startup Mission in association with CAV Startup Labs. B4S is a business generation targeted program for startups with the primary objective of imparting knowledge to the Indian startups about the business opportunities in different countries. Today, we have Flat 6 Labs, which is MENA region's leading accelerator and early stage venture capital firm, to discuss about the topic scaling up in the Middle East with Flat 6 Labs, benefit and opportunities for Indian startups. To discuss this, we have amazing speakers with us today. Let me welcome Mr. Ryan Sharif, General Manager for Flat 6 Labs, and Mr. Anmol Arora, who is the CEO of company named DocVita. To moderate this discussion, we have Mr. Vishnu Nagraj, founder and CEO of CAV Startups Labs. Welcome, Vishnu. Without further delay, let me hand over the stage to the panel moderator. Over to you, Vishnu.
So thanks a lot, Kerala Startup Mission, for this wonderful initiative. And thanks a lot for Flat 6 Labs accepting our request to help our startups. It's great. After the success of the first edition, we are coming back to Business for Startup second edition, and especially one of the favorite market, which all the Indian as well as Kerala startups will looking is the MENA region. And again, I'm thanking to give this opportunity to CSL. So before starting to the questions, and let us hear from our eminent panelists, starting from Rian. We need to hear from about you and about the startup, Flat 6 Labs.
Brilliant. Anyway, thank you very much for having me on today. It's been a pleasure to be connected with all of you and also the attendees. So yeah, my name is Ryan Sharif. I'm the General Manager of Flat 6 Labs UAE. Our primary mandate is to invest $32 million into early stage startups over the next 3 years. We're planning to do 60 investments over the next 3 years. We've already done 19 investments, and we're currently in the boot camp right now, picking our next 10 startups. So yeah, that's a little bit about me and our fund. Our fund is primarily funded by a single LP, which is a company called ADQ, which is the third largest sovereign wealth fund in Abu Dhabi. It has $115 billion of assets under management, and they've entrusted us with $32 million to invest in early stage startups globally.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ryan. Thanks for that wonderful information about your intro. And now the time to hear from Anmol. Anmol, please, a few words about you and your company.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. My name is Anmol. I'm the CEO at DocVita. We're a telehealth platform on WhatsApp. You can think of us as being a very big online hospital on WhatsApp. All of our clients, all of our doctors don't have to download any apps. They book our consultations on WhatsApp, and they do their appointments on Zoom and Google Meet.
Thanks, Anmol. Thanks for that intro, and thanks for coming and explaining about your experience, everything to our audience. So before starting into more, let us hear from you guys. Like, what are the major challenges? Like, let's start with the challenges, because most of the startups, when they do something in the home ground, when they try to expand to another country, especially when it comes to the Middle East region, because Flat 6 Lab is not only for the UAE, everywhere, the entire one of the biggest actors. So you've seen lots of startups when they come to this market. So what are the biggest challenges they have to overcome? And you can give an advice to let them prepare before they expanding. I want to hear from Ryan first. Regarding that.
Sure, yeah. I think some of the biggest challenges for international startups, and the fact that we have an international mandate, means that probably nearly 50% of our cohort is actually made up of companies that are potentially looking to scale into the region, but are also looking for that investment in order to try and give them a bit more of a commitment to move into the region. And I think Anmol with DocVita is a prime example of a perfect Indian-based company that was looking at the GCC region. The product market fit was brilliant, but they needed a little bit of funding from this part of the world in order to stimulate that push in order to grow. I believe some of the challenges would be, it's a totally new market. It's very different from India. So although culturally we have a lot of similarities, the Middle East and India, we've also been trading partners for hundreds of years. especially with Karela. Karela, there's a massive Karelian population based out of the Middle East. I think some of the challenges is just all very new to them. So they come into the country, they have a product, they're looking to scale the product, but they might not be have many corporate contacts, or they might not be accustomed to some of the ways that business take place here in terms of timelines and so forth. So I think working in an accelerator and having an accelerator as a partner will help break down some of these barriers in terms of helping them in terms of corporate connections, but also that cohort feeling where you're potentially working with startups that are already based in the GCC, even communicating with them, getting a better understanding of how to do business in the region will help those companies scale into the region.
Excellent points. Thanks, Ryan, for giving an overview of almost all the startup. Let us hear from Anmol as an Indian startup, and you also scaled a different GCC region, and also you're a part of Flat6 Labs. What are the challenges you face, and how Flat6 Labs helped you to overcome it? So it's great. We want to hear from you, Anmol. Yeah, few words.
No, happy to answer and kind of explain through our journey as well. So before we joined Flat6 Labs, we had a very small customer base in the UAE already, which kind of like were giving us early signs that there's a need for our product and service in the UAE, and we kind of like need to expand there. So there was a natural plan of expansion. What Flat6 Labs kind of did for us, it gave us a soft landing into the UAE. Right, we were designing a B2B program, so it gave us like an outlet to approach these companies, get directly introduced to decision makers, and kind of like be in front of them, talking about their idea, getting feedback, and then improving the next day. Right. So obviously, the startups that it depends on what product and service you're selling, and the challenges are highly like based on that. But once you know that this is your target customer, what an accelerator can do is they can actually help you faster connect with those customers. For example, I remember before our bootcamp day, and before I actually demoed as well, there was a little bit of PR in the region where all of our startup names were announced, right? And our website got some traffic, and we started getting more customers from that region because people in that region consume that news, right? So essentially, sort of like depends on who you are, depends on what you are selling and who you're selling it to. What an accelerator at Flat6 Labs can do is it can help you fast track those connections. But you might have to wait for weeks to meet with somebody. You can do that in days. So that is I would say the biggest superpower.
Yeah, it's a great point, because especially when it comes to scaling, we need the market connect is very important. Where even if you have did something in ground, marketing is good. And thanks for that point, Anmol. And before going to the next question, I'm throwing one message, like all the startups, you can ask any questions. You can drop your questions in the chat. In the end, we will go for a Q&A session. So if you have any questions you want to ask Ryan and Anmol, you can drop it in the chat, and we will address that in the end of the session. And thanks for that. And before next question, Ryan, as we know, we have a strong connect in this Arabian GCC region, especially when it comes to Kerala. Most of the startups might have the connect already. They might be having, like you already said, like lots of Malayalis, lots of people are there already in different regions. So why choosing an accelerator will be an advantage instead of going directly to a direct connect? So how it will differ, say, especially when it comes to GCC, these people might have some connect. So what you can say, like how it will different instead of going a direct, going through a Flat6 will be benefiting these startups from your point of view?
Yeah, I think there's been a common misconception with the term accelerator. A lot of founders will feel, why do I need to commit time to a program where I feel like I already have a vast amount of knowledge, and all I need is monetary value in order to grow the team and actually scale? I think it's a common misconception. I think the way that accelerators, which have historically been perhaps a bit more classroom setting and content being taught directly at them, has actually pivoted themselves in terms of the way that things are prescribed to the startups. I think today what we see more is perhaps we still have certain elements of the classroom setting, which can become now more interactive rather than being spoken at. but I think there's a large element of actually trying to make a more tailored program centric around the startups. And here in Flat 6 Labs, especially in the second and third month of our program, it's really trying to find what are the weak points of the startup and trying to bring in coaches, mentors, and trainers to upskill them on those areas of deficiency. And I think a lot of the startups, because they're so busy in terms of growing their business and so centric on pleasing their customers, a lot of the times they actually forget that they need to spend a little bit more time internally to try and grow themselves in order to be able to grow the business exponentially. And I feel perhaps Anmol is a good example of that. I feel like he went through certain areas where, you know, him and his team, super laser focused, very hard workers, live in the office till very late hours into the early morning. And I think even them, extremely mature founders, XY Combinator, managed to raise, you know, a good amount of money from angels. I think they even appreciated having that time to actually reflect and actually take some learnings on board for help them to become better founders.
Great, Ryan. Like, it's not only the money, the education and learning. Always you have to be open for learning new things from. And Anmol, as a beneficiary of this, as Ryan rightly said, you are an example. Like, you already are a beneficiary of how Flat 6 Labs helped you to scale it better than the normal direct way. So how you can give an advice before, like, people like you are looking to expand to this GCC region, how this Flat 6 Lab gonna help them? What kind of an advice, how to get into them? Maybe your experience wise you can share to the startups. Yeah, let us hear from you.
Of course, I think when somebody joins an accelerator program, a lot of the times founders are singularly thinking of either the capital that they get or the access to the accelerator and the team members that they get. What they heavily discount is the batchmates that you get as a part of that accelerator program. This is actually also one of the very crucial elements, right? For example, if you are 10 companies trying to scale something together, right? 4 of them are B2B, 6 of them are B2C, right? There are a lot of learnings that you exchange within the founders. And also one thing that an accelerator does very well, even by combinating Flat 6, is that you have a demo day coming up, and this is like a deadline. So it kind of acts as a forcing function for you to make progress. For example, let's say if I have a demo day coming up in August, right? And I know that I have to raise capital after this demo day. And just like, I mean, a lot of engineers do their best work on the last night of the exams, right? A lot of founders, when they have these forcing function of growth, and then you kind of like tend to cut the noise, get the priorities right, and focus on the right things, right? So you have no option of wasting time. And actually, along that way of like you trying to chase some metrics, some goals, you have your fellow founders on the way, and you have like a team to bank on the way, right? So who can kind of tell you the common mistakes. For example, I remember, like, for example, 3-4 of our startup founders, we were sitting together and, we were talking, I'm facing this problem in organizing my team. Somebody was saying, I'm running this advertising campaign, this is not really working for me. So everybody's kind of brainstorming ideas and kind of bringing in their learning. So, the more startup founders there are in that cohort, you kind of multiply your intelligence along with them. You learn a lot. And it's like you learn so much in such a short span of time, and you develop friendships that last a lifetime. I'm still in touch with a lot of my fellow founders from YC and Flat 6 Labs, which give me the most valuable advice at the times when I need them, because we all at the same stage, So from that sense, I think it's not just the accelerator, it's not just the education, it's like the combined experience of the whole thing, along with the forcing function of a deadline that you have to perform, and which already like sets you up for success.
Great. Thanks for that inputs also. Like, maybe the most of the startups can decide according to the term accelerator. It's like a combined education, deadlines, as you said, and the experienced people who is always going to push you to achieve your goals. That's a very good point. Thanks, Anmol, for that. And let me also ask you one more question regarding that. Maybe starting from you is better. So before going to this GCC region, as I discussed, you are not only that every Flat 6 Labs countries also you are now trying to expand. What are the go-to-market strategies which you planned before from in India to this kind of a GCC region? Whether you did any kind of a strategy, what kind of things you did? Maybe you can also give an advice to the startups before expanding this. What are the things they have to do when it comes to go-to-market strategy? Yes.
I think sort of like, I think the question that you've asked is kind of very abstract, and probably there could be like a 2-hour lecture around this. But to kind of like cut it very short and touch upon like a simple overview, is the sense that anytime you're going to market, the most fundamental question is something a lot of people don't answer very well, right? And this is something you also discover along the way. Number one is, what is the product that you're building? Who are you building it for? What is the problem it is solving, right? I mean, for example, if you have clarity on what are you building and who are you building it for, then you can reach the right target audience and say, I'm building this. Is it useful for you, right? So if you're looking at the GCC market as a whole, people in general all over the world, 99.9% are the same. There's like small differences in the way culturally they operate. The price point will be different, right? So your GTM essentially does not just include selling your service in another part of the world. You have to also figure out what is the right price. Are you charging less? Maybe you're leaving money on the table. Are you going to charge more? Maybe you are high price and no, like, a lot of people won't be able to afford your services, right? So from that sense, I think GTM is highly personalized for each founder and their startup. But on a large level, if you know what you're making, if you know who you're selling it for, then the GTM becomes very clear. For example, if I'm entering Bahrain now, or if I'm entering Oman, and any region at all, essentially, right? I can just simply say that this is my customer, this is where they're located. I have to reach these customers, whether that happens through Flat6 Labs in an easy fashion, whether that happens through me sending LinkedIn requests to like so many people and then hearing back from one of them. Ultimate goal is to reach there.
Sorry, you're breaking up now, Vishnu. We can't hear you.
Your voice is breaking up. If these are AirPods, maybe try disconnecting and connecting them again.
Actually, I can take the next question. So maybe I can host it for a little bit. So the next question actually is related to building strong relationships with investors. How does that work? What are the sort of cultural differences in doing that in India versus the Middle East? And how important are follow-ups? I mean, my sort of 2 cents on that is that in order to create relationships with investors, I would highly recommend that you really do your research, right? So really research the VC that you are looking to approach, try to better understand what their investment mandate is, what sort of areas of investment that they actually invest in. Are they interested in fintechs? Are they interested in education tech? And really try and create and map out exactly which investors are actually appropriate for your particular company. Secondly, what I would invest is try and create relationships very early on. I think it's extremely important to have more of a friendly relationship with these investors before you start pitching and try to sell to them. It's good to get to know them as a person. It's good to build rapport with them. And then later on, once you have that confidence, to go to the investor. I also don't think it's ever too early to start making relationships with investors. I think that's a very common misperception, is that, I don't want to go because I'm not ready. It's more talking about, who you are, what you're doing, and then eventually showing, the rapid progress that you've made in terms of building the product. And I think that becomes a more impressive thing to the investor, to see this guy came to me when he was just toying with the idea of building this, and look at the incredible amount of traction that he's been able to build over the next, 2, 3, 4 months. So that's my 2 cents on this subject. Anmol, what do you think?
I think, one thing that a lot of people discount in investor relationships is trust. they think I have a great product, great traction, I should get the money, right? But trust is something that you build over time and as a track record, and there is no shortcut to doing that, right? And sort of like a lot of the investments, they essentially work like retail investment. So the way I have thought of it is like, for example, I have a very small stocks portfolio, and every once in a week, I take a look at them and see how they're performing, right? The same happens for investors as well. They have a portfolio and they regularly check in on how their portfolio is doing, right? So if you are an investor in X number of companies, you would love to know how they are doing. So number one thing that a lot of founders don't do is updates. Either like they don't send updates or they start lying on their updates. It's actually a very bad habit. So I think one thing that all of our investors have always appreciated is that we've always been very truthful in our updates, more metric focused than quality focused. And if something is not working, we are not afraid to admit it is not working, right? It is a market insight. So from that sense, the more honest you are with the investors, and like, don't try to sugarcoat things, be very, very honest, and like, just be consistent in sending out your updates, like in how you're doing. If they see you making progress from 1 month to 3 months to 6 months, they know that if you've made progress over 6 months, the data is proof that you will make progress over the next 6 months as well. So the money that any investor puts in you is actually sort of like going to be towards more progress. So that is how like I look at it, is that if I'm actually taking money from somebody, like it has to go towards making progress, and they have to be confident that I am making progress. So you tend to like create that over time.
Okay. Thanks. So sorry for this small technical glitch happened. Hope you understand. Sorry for that. And yeah, thanks for sharing the information about maintaining the relationship with the investors and all. And we have the next question, Ryan. I want to ask you on, as we know that Flat 6 Labs is not only in the UAE region, lots of countries, they have the access, and they have doing very well in, especially it's one of the best accelerator in that particular GCC region. So how you can give an advice, like how it's going to help the startups to go to the different countries? Like if they get into one, as you said, the Anmol also got that particular benefit. How they gonna get this kind of access in different countries, especially in the GCC? I want to hear you.
Yeah, actually, it's a great question. I don't think Amwal has actually leveraged that yet in terms of the access to the other offices that we have. But we have great examples of companies that have actually gone through that process. So I think one misconception is that the GCC is collected as a collective, and everybody thinks that their economies, the way that the pricing is done, should be done the same across each GCC country, which is very untrue, to be honest. The demography of each country is actually very different. So, for example, in Bahrain, you have 50% expatriates, 50% locals. Then you have the UAE, where you have almost only 5% locals, and then the rest expatriates. Then you look at a demography like Saudi Arabia, where you have highly affluent people and mostly locals again, very little expatriates. So I think one of the key differentiators about Flat 6 Labs is that we have this regional reach. We're already in 7 locations across the Middle East and North Africa. We understand our markets. We have corporate connections in each of the markets. We have investor pools in each of the markets. And when a company is eventually looking to scale into all the other GCC and North African countries, I feel that we're in a prime position to help with that. And I do feel it's a huge selling point to Flat 6 Labs as a brand to have this, because if you look at the Y Combinators, if you look at the 500 startups, they don't really have the same type of access that we do when it comes to building those relationships and ties with the locals. So, I mean, we had a great company called Grow My Code, and they actually leveraged all of our offices. They initially started using the office space in the offices that we had. And then eventually, when they built up enough traction, they were able to carve out of our offices, go and open up their own office space. And they'd already started building quite a mature clientele base. So I think that's another advantage to applying to our program. I feel that if you're looking at really scaling across GCC and North Africa, I mean, there couldn't be a better accelerator partner than us.
So great, Ryan. It's a wonderful opportunity to get into one accelerated and helping the startups to go expand GCC. Anmol, you have any such an experience as a beneficiary of a startup? As you got into the startup Flagship Labs, I know that you're not even completely leveraged, but maybe you might be felt or an experience wise as a beneficiary, with whether how this helped you as a startup. So people will feel want to hear from you itself, like any experience you got by expanding to different places. Yeah.
No, I mean, I have not really leveraged the full network yet because I mean, we're still in that growth stage. But the one thing that actually was very useful for us is to avoid the common mistakes and sort of like understand what is culturally relevant in what place. I mean, as Ryan rightly mentioned, for example, if you look at the population of Dubai, Abu Dhabi, it's going to be like a very different customer mindset. Whereas if you sort of like go a little bit further to Egypt or like, like all the regions are very different. The one really superpower that you get along with Flat Six Labs is that because they have key offices in regions and there are people who live in that regions, and you can just like directly get on a call with them on a day or 2 day, 3 day notice, and then get all your customer insights straight, right? And who will give you very honest advice. They will not be like, you can treat them as your family members, right? And they will give you very honest advice because they have vested interest in your success, right? So from that sense, I think that was very useful for us because we were thinking of something and it helped us avoid a lot of common mistakes during our international launch, help us correct the right pricing. Because I mean, probably Ryan remembers this. I was going around and asking everybody in the office, what should be the price of DocVita service in the UAE region, right? And then sort of like, I was pricing it too low. And they were like, no, it's like, this is common here, like, based on average income of people. So a lot of things like you don't understand the nuances. Unless you're living in that region for 4 or 5 years, you will not understand the nuances of customers in that region. And that is something you can quickly leverage as a part of like the network. Just approach somebody, ask the right questions, and you get instant answers. So yeah, that is something I've done.
I think just to add to that, Paul, I think, sorry to jump in and start taking control of some of the questions. I just remember this. I remember there was an instance where Anmol went to a social gathering in the UAE, and it was probably one of his biggest learnings as well, was actually sitting with people that would potentially use his services, really understanding, the Indian demographic, which is kind of his key clientele in the UAE. And that interaction alone of him being physically here, starting to make friends, really understanding the cultural difference of an Indian expatriate living in Dubai versus, a local Indian living in India, really helped scale and get a better appreciation of the type of customer profile he's trying to address. So I think that's another key point that we really haven't mentioned, is that the physical presence of the startup being on the ground, really understanding the market and really driving the product is key to you actually growing in an area. It's very easy for a startup to say, I want to be a global company and I want to grow into the GCC. But if they don't make the commitment to actually being here, spending time here and growing their market here, it won't happen.
It's a great point. Like you should be in a market instead of like it's nothing we can't do. So going to the market, scale from the scratch. Even if you're a king in the home ground, when it comes to another place, you have to start. Thanks for that particular thing. So Anmol, I have one more question for you. What are the key useful resources and a piece of advice as a startup you can recommend, or you can give an advice to the particular startup before going to this GCC market? What are the kind of open resources which help, and what kind of an advice you may give as a ending? You can give a message.
I think the most helpful advice that I've received in my whole journey is that if you are pre-product right now and you have not launched yet, the only thing that matters for you is to launch as soon as possible. No matter how unready you think you are, you have to launch with a product that does the job in a very mediocre fashion. Don't be perfectionist here, right? If you're pre-product market, launch the product ASAP. If you already are in the market, right, try to dial this down to a single metric. For example, for us, the metric that we track and we make progress on is revenue. For somebody, it can be daily active users, monthly active users. So wherever you are in your journey, if you're pre-product, launch ASAP. If you've launched already, track that metric and grow week over week. try to get into the habit of tracking your metrics on a weekly basis. The more aware you are of your metrics, the better you are in a position to make progress in them, right? So that's the only thing that has made all the difference in at least our journey.
Okay, thanks for that advice and help, Elmo, as a point. And Ryan, the final question, all the startups are eagerly waiting. How to join Flat 6 Labs? What kind of a program? So let us know like how this startup will get benefited and get into this Flat 6 Labs. So let's talk about the accelerator in the process.
Sure. I mean, the Flat 6 Labs application is quite simple. I mean, you go to flat6labs.com. You click on the tab for the UAE and there's an apply now button. We're already accepting applications for cycle 4, and those cycle 4 applications will be considered. There's a questionnaire of anywhere between 20 to 30 questions detailing, what your company is, how they're doing, many different types of specifications. And then once you've made that application, we actually have, in every 6 months, we have approximately 600 to 700 applicants that apply, and we only pick 10 companies. Anmol has been through the process. It's quite competitive. Anmol was quite lucky to be highly recommended by somebody as well, so that also helped. But I would suggest go apply. Follow up with us and we'll look at your application and see if we can push you through the accelerator. The program lasts for 4 months. You'll be based out of the UAE for that 4 months, looking to grow the market here. And then after you graduate, we'll also be working together with you hand in hand to try and help you get much more healthy valuations than the one that we invested in you. So yeah, that's the sort of premise of what we're doing.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Thanks for that input. And most of the questions, I think they are asking how to apply and all. Before taking the questions, and as you said, Ryan said, Anmol already gone through this process. Can you give me a throw of how that sort of experience and how they can apply is better? Like maybe as a startup, where you've gone through this whole process, can you give an advice of them how to get into a Flat 6 Lab or during the application, what they have to focus, etc. Maybe just an add-on to the Ryan's part. Please.
I think the application process is fairly easy. I don't think there is any complicated questions because it's largely based on facts and essentially if you're talking to users, you already have some customer insights. So one advice is that number one, if you're not talking to your users, talk to your users and leave some customer insights into the application, because that is always impressive for somebody to read because they learn something they don't already know, right? And sort of like just either from the time of making the application, from the time when you give an interview, also if you have made progress on your either primary metrics or you have launched and learned something new, weave those customer insights in the interview as well. And essentially the process is like you make an application, then you get invited to an interview, you do the interview, and then you get invited for a boot camp. When you're in the boot camp, I think you learn a lot during that process, and you kind of even refine even further. And a lot of the founder's job is to bring more clarity into what you're doing, communicate more clearly in how that impacts on every level. And that tends to happen very quickly when you're with everybody else as well. So just like, I think from the application process, keep it very simple, leave some customer insights, and just keep making progress. That's the only thing I would have as an advice.
Okay, thanks for that view. And Ryan, thanks for sharing the link into the chat. Guys, you all see the particular application link is already there in the chat and shared by Ryan. And also one more thing, this is already live in YouTube. Lots of people can also get back these particular sessions, and we're also going to take an expression of interest so that you can, any queries, you can reach us and you can apply effectively. And you guys can reach them, Anmol and Ryan in LinkedIn also. And before the closing, let us hear from there are some questions in the chat, so maybe we can answer one by one. Few questions we already answered. Thompson asked one question like, can we help, whether Flat 6 Labs will help the startup to recruit locally, but when it comes to they want a team, etc. So they're asking whether you will help connecting the local skilled people, especially when it comes to that market. We need the people from there. So that's one of the question they asked. Ryan,
yeah, I think it really depends on what they're looking for. I think we work with consultants and people that help us source people, but it really depends on the domain that you're particularly looking at. Is it back end? Is it somebody who wants to build product, or is it somebody on a more sales function that is looking to push? I think one of the things that we do is we work with some of the local universities as well, who provide very junior entrants to come in and work for the company. But it really depends on what capacity. But of course, we can help with any HR requests once you're in the program.
Yeah, a few questions as such. I'm not. Yeah, there is one follow-up questions they added from Thousand. Can you explain?
Sure.
Yeah,
I mean,
the same.
If you're looking from a sales perspective, which is quite standard. Yeah, I think maybe Anmol can talk a little bit about this as well, because he actually toyed with the idea of hiring a sales force here. Probably better person to answer the question.
Yeah, I think when you're hiring people, two things matter a lot. Number one is what you're looking for. Are you looking for hiring somebody in a high experience function in the same domain, or do you have somebody from a different domain coming in? I think once you're zeroed in on the idea, you can effectively get a benchmark on compensation very easily via Flat 6 Labs, because like they can tell you how much salary to pay, whether you're overpaying or underpaying. Once you know who to hire, for example, if you want to hire a lot of interns, Flat 6 Labs has relationships with, I think they have a relationship with NYUAD as well. We hired an intern very recently from there. They have a relationship with other universities as well. So you can hire interns from there, and it can be a paid or unpaid internship depending on between you and the intern. If you want to hire a full-time employee, obviously they're like regular resources, which are probably LinkedIn, some maybe job listing websites. But one really real superpower you have when you're there is actually you can use Flat 6 Labs office space to conduct in-person interviews, right? And you have a very formal setting in which you can interact with a candidate, right? Because in a startup, what essentially happens is a lot of roles overlap. People wear multiple hats, and you effectively want people to have that mindset, right? So whenever you're inviting somebody to meet you in person, there's a good first impression, and there's a lot of trust that comes along with the brand. So that is definitely very helpful in hiring everything. And Flat 6 Labs also has really good support staff to coordinate everything for you. For example, when somebody's coming into the office, taking care of that person entering the office, actually introducing you, having a good environment in the office, all those things are already taken care of by Flat 6. From the sourcing front also, for example, I met a lot of the colleagues of some of the Flat 6 Lab staff as well as a part of networking. So in those networking mixers and series, I met a lot of people which probably we could potentially hire down the line. And it's good to have relationships with them now, because when you start building an executive team, I think maybe Ryan has actually mentioned this to me several times. I know right now you're hiring for different functions, but when you start building a leadership team, it becomes really difficult to source people. So you have to start making those relationships very early on. And that is also very helpful. So when you're building a sales team, you need a leader there. You need to start building relationships very early on, because good people are very hard to find. They will not leave their comfortable jobs just on the premise of one conversation. You need to, just like in building relationships with investors, you have to build relationships with people as well. So that happens as a part of the program naturally when you're there.
Thanks, Anmol, for clearing that questions. And we have a few more questions. Few we already answered in the session. And one question from Nishant is the topmost question, like whether Flat 6 Lab help on the complaints, especially when it comes to medical product and all. As a product complaints as related things, whether it will help. That's one of the questions from Nisha. So, Ryan, it's for you, I think. Yeah, both. I think maybe you can also answer.
I mean, I'm more than happy to hear from the founder's mouth. So
yes.
No, I think one biggest help that you can have is first understanding which category of medical side you fall into, whether you're a medical device or a digital health solution. And as a part of the Flat 6 Lab program, you also get access to some legal office hours with like a very good lawyer, which I think maybe, if I'm not wrong, some hours are already paid for you. So you don't have to think about which one. I don't think we were able to utilize all of those hours. I think we got our answers very quickly. So you get introduced to people very quickly. And then because you have local presence, one of the biggest things that is that makes a difference in compliances is knowing who to speak to, when to speak to them, and like how to push the buttons, right? And that thing you get from fellow founders, because a lot of your fellow founders have already figured it out, right? Flat6 Labs has a very big portfolio of companies. If there's a medical company, another medical company, Flat6 Labs, you can directly speak to the founder there, understand how they navigated those challenges, and kind of just import that. For example, we spoke to another founder who kind of helped us understand one of the common mistakes we were about to make in the region. So from the compliances perspective, I would say rely on the lawyers to do what they do best. Don't do it yourself. And then rely on founders to understand the common mistakes that they've made and then just learn from them.
Thanks for that, especially when it comes to medical. I think you might be experienced this and great advice. And we have one attendee raised hand. We want to ask a question directly. Ashwati EK is raised hand. You can your access, your request is permitted. Ashwati, you can ask question. Ashwati, you there? Permission is granted, so you can ask the question if you need. If anything,
Vishnu, you might have to click on request to unmute.
I think we given the access.
Okay.
Maybe Prajit, brother, I think you can only give the access to them.
No, I had given her access, but she was on mute.
I think Nishant Nambiar needs that access. Nishant again raised hand. So please, Nishant, you can unmute and talk.
Hello.
Yeah, Nishant, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, Anmol and Ryan. Thank you for these insights. So my question is to Ryan. Just wanted to understand that we have worked on a medical product for the Saudi Arabian market. So whether we need to approach Flat6 Labs in Abu Dhabi, will they help us from there, or should we approach the KSA group?
So it's actually probably much better to approach the KSA group. They have some very exciting news that has been coming out over the last couple of weeks about the $40 million fund that they've raised over in Saudi. And I think they'll be accepting applications very shortly for their program. But they're run by a fantastic team, somebody who has extensive experience in the venture capital space, and has worked extensively in the Saudi ecosystem. Also, the team, the more junior team members in that team, all come from a breadth of experience working in different industries across Saudi. So I think it would probably be most appropriate if you wait a month. I think it's about a month or two before they start taking applications. Apply to that program. If you manage to get selected for the boot camp, you'll be flown in to Saudi to pitch, and take it from there. But Saudi is a very extremely interesting market, largest economy in the GCC. So very exciting times, and a lot of interesting tech companies now being formed out of Saudi to service Saudi.
Yeah, sure, Ryan. Because we have already worked in Saudi Arabia. I was in KAUST University for some time. And that's how the connect in Saudi Arabia is. We work with the Ministry of Health also. So we wanted to accelerate our growth in the region. So that's why I think Flat6 Labs seems to be appropriate for us at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, the tickets are healthy as well. The seat stage tickets, from what I understand, are similar to what we're offering in Abu Dhabi, maybe even more. Probably disclosing too much right now, but it's definitely worth looking at that program. It's going to be a great program.
Sure. And is it Iyad, the point of contact there?
Correct. Yeah, Iyad.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
No worries.
Thanks, Nishan. Thanks for that. Thanks, Ryan, for helping them and understanding more. And before closing, I think if there is any questions, you guys can ask in the chat, or you can reach Ryan and Anmol through the LinkedIn. We will share his LinkedIn IDs. You can reach them. And also, please mail to Flat6 Lab if you have more queries regarding that. And I invite Prajit, brother, to give a brief about the final thing. Yeah, Prajit, it's up to you.
So yeah, that was indeed a great power pack and a highly knowledgeable session. Thank you, Ryan and Anmol, for giving those insights about not just about Flat6 Labs, but also about like how to scale in that Middle East region. And I'm really impressed with the way that Flat6 Labs is doing a great job in this Middle East market supporting the startups. you guys are really supporting the startup ecosystem. So hats off for that. When it comes to Kerala to let's even say India to Middle East relationship, there has been a very huge and very impactful relationships. When it comes to Kerala, it is even more. Why? Because we have been a regular visitor at GITEX since last 5-6 years, and some great news are coming for Kerala startups from that ecosystem. Like a lot of funds raised, a lot of business connections happening, lot of scaling up is happening there for the Kerala startups. And I must say, in globally, if you look at UAE, not just UAE, GCC is the greatest market for Kerala startups, and we hope that will still be continued through Plastic Labs. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Anmol, for taking your precious time to come over here virtually, spend some time with our startup. And I'm damn sure that those startups, those founders who are there today listening, this session, they would have got some really great insights. After this, we will definitely be inviting the EOI from the startup ecosystem, and which we believe that we will have a lot of interest floating in. And based on that, we will have a meeting with those startups. Thank you, Vishnu, for this effective moderation as usual. Thank you for bringing in Plastic Labs to Kerala startup ecosystem, making them meet with the Kerala startups. Yeah, that's it. Over to you, Vishnu.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, gents. And again, as I said, please go to our website to apply. We're really excited about having more Indian applicants. As you know, we have a deep relationship, especially with Kerala Startup Mission. We've had the likes of FOAPS, Expressbase, which are Indian-based Kerala companies that have applied to our program and actually got in. So yeah, anybody who's watching now, we would encourage you to apply, and we'd love to view your applications.
Yeah, so I thank you, Ryan, for reminding me that. So that was indeed a great thing. Like as a kind of a testimonial, or as a kind of, if someone want to ask directly to the founders, like if there are any startups from Kerala who are a part of Plastic Labs. So there are 3 startups who have been the part of Plastic Labs. So startups from Malabar region. So one is FOAPS. Founder name is Salah. Then one is Expressbase, the founder name is Suresh, and one is Arctic Boat, the founder name is Rahul. So these 3 startups, were into the Plastic Lab Accelerator program, and they say a lot about Plastic. In fact, I can see a participant and attendee here. Mr. Sagish is here. So Sagish was a participant, not a participant. He has applied for the Plastic Lab Accelerator program in 2019, I guess. And he reached the second last or last round. So yeah, Sagish also knows the process very well. And through Sagish only, I came to know about Plastic Lab Accelerator. So great to see Sagish here.
Great, thanks. Well, maybe apply again.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
We love founders that return and eventually make it in. It's happened many times.
Yeah.
We've had people that have gone once, twice. We actually had a company that has become extremely famous now and raised a very large amount of money. I think it was the 4th time of them applying and then eventually getting in. They've now become a multi-million-dollar business. So never give up.
Right. That's the true message. And he will certainly never.
So thanks for that good note and good positivity. Like never give up and play. And thanks for supporting our Indian startups, especially Kerala startups, through Plastic Labs. We are so happy that we did this particular panel. And thanks, Ryan and Anmol, you spending this much of time. I know you are busy with lots of boot camps, lots of programs, but still you came and you spent your time to help. For even working and making such programs to benefit not only always startups across India and that thanks for participation. We listen and ask. Hope for get into this. Let's again for a future any initiative, happy to onboard you and do more initiative. Thanks for the time. Thanks, Anmol. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Sujit.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. All the best.
Thanks. Bye.